So I'm reading Oathbringer. I'm 240 pages in, and I'm just about to start chapter 24. I want to talk about what's happened so far, make some bold predictions as to what I think is going to happen, and just generally share my enjoyment of the book so far and the series with you. So the main protagonist in this one is Dalinar, and we join Dalinar in this section, and he's trying to speak to different rulers and have them join his cause. And of course, he's using the span reed to do this. And Navani mentions that she is speaking with a Thaylen merchant, and that is how she is conversing with the Shin. And the first thing that springs to mind is, could this be the same Thaylen merchant that we saw previously with the girl who fell off of the giant creature that was the Reshi Isles? And I forget her name. Was it Yim? YM? Potentially. That might have been another character. But either way, it would be very surprising if that wasn't the same merchant. So what does that mean for our interaction with the Shin? I don't know, but I'm glad that they found their way back into the story. And we get a fateful line, a line that we will live to regret, and we now see the irony of it. And it's something along the lines of, if everything else Dalinar had failed in, he at least would have Taravangian. Which is hilarious, because if you were like me, I felt like Taravangian was a safe, nice, bumbling, older ruler, and that was what we were led to believe. And then we get the bombshell that he is in fact this quasi super intelligent guy on, you know, a temporary basis, on a day-by-day basis. And one time he woke up and he was so intelligent that he created this master plan and prophecy, essentially, and now he's acting that out. And some days he still wakes up much more intelligent than a regular man. And not only do we get that information, but we also get the information that he was masterminding the death of Dalinar by sending the white, the assassin in white, to go and kill him, which is, of course, Zeph, who was defeated. And now maybe he's having a second attempt. So I don't know what sits inside of his master plan, but I would guess the second attempt on Dalinar's life is pretty high up there. It seemed to be important, and it's so ironic that Dalinar is making the same mistake as everybody else. And it's difficult not to make mistakes when you're dealing with the craftiest and or the most intelligent person in the world on a good day, who wants complete control, it would seem. So that storyline is probably the one that I'm most interested in. I just think that Taravangian is such an interesting character, and we haven't had that much of him yet, so I hope he works his way more and more into the story, and I can't wait for their first interactions and to have him on a regular basis in the story where we can try to analyze what's going on and be hopelessly lost by somebody with much greater intelligence in the book. And we also learn of Odiums Champion, and there's some things that are said, and I'm going to read off my notes here. So he does not age, and they say he, so if we believe them, then it's a he. He feels, he is angry, but this does not change. His rage does not cool. Epochs could pass and he will remain the same. It sounds like my first guess and first thing that came to mind was some kind of like eternal thing on the earth, the spren for that thing. And I don't know exactly how the spren work, it's still very confusing, but something that is like eternal or at least very long lasting would be maybe like the sea. So maybe there's a spren for like the total sea, but I have no idea how on earth that would end up being the champion of Odium. Maybe a void spren goes into that spren, but that doesn't make much sense, does it? So who knows? I don't have any great guesses. I made some wild guesses in the previous video as to his champion. I'm just going to leave it there because we don't have any more information right now. But we do learn that Odium cannot break his oaths, which is interesting, and I think that's some foreshadowing. I don't think there's any way that information doesn't come back to haunt or help us, most likely help us later on in the book. But again, I don't know how. One thing that I do have a strong guess on is the sword. The sword that was Zeph's that is now available. And we get a scene where Dalinar is kind of chuffed, kind of proud of the hiding place that he has found for this extremely dangerous sword. And I just think there is absolutely no way that this sword doesn't find its way into the hands of someone else. And who would I like it to go to? I think Adolin. That would be a great person to have these extra abilities. I think he would look after them well. Who do I think would be best for the story? Well, Amaram is back in town. Mraize is also here as well. And I think because he was so excited about his hiding place, I think that means that, of course, somebody else is going to figure it out and find out that it's there and take it and cause havoc. So my guess would be one of those two. However, it is mentioned, and we're going to talk about Shallan a lot later on in the video, it is mentioned that she is tasked by Mraize to cut out the darkness, I believe it is. And we don't know. There could be so much here in Urithiru, and I say that wrong every time. Someone will correct me in the comments. We're in Urithiru. We haven't even explored all the levels yet. This is where the Radiants used to have their base. There's no way there aren't maybe extra beings there, but at least extra secrets there. So it could be anything that occurs. But my guess would be Amaram or Mraize manages to get their hands on this sword. And the most exciting news is Dalinar remembers his wife's name. And I'm racking my brains because I'm trying to figure out why this could have happened. Maybe it's because a storm passed. I don't think so. I think I'm trying to remember who might have tried to heal him. Because I thought for a little while that maybe Renarin was going to have that ability. But instead, I think potentially it's because it's the first time we see him use Stormlight. I'm going to say on camera, because I always say that, but in a scene that we're in, and maybe that Stormlight healed the curse or boon that the Night Watcher put on him. And that got me to thinking, like, is there a way that that could happen to Taravangian? Is there a way that somebody could cure his, you know, intelligence issues? And I would guess he was relatively intelligent anyway, but if he woke up and he wasn't, you know, super smart anymore, or didn't have the opportunity to be super smart, because I know some days he wakes up and he's incredibly dumb because it's a scale, right? But that would be interesting because he would have his plan, but how well would he be able to work his plan if he didn't have any more days where he was super intelligent? He was just like us, but trying to work the plan. But anyway, so his wife's name he now remembers, and I don't know if he's going to be able to remember everything about his wife, or if it's just going to come back slowly to him and we're going to start with her name. But we get a flashback, and in this flashback we see when he meets her, and it becomes pretty clear that she is definitely going to be the one that tames him. Based on that interaction, is my guess is she is the one that tames him. Because I thought for a while maybe it was Gavilar, you know, being like, hey, we need to become more political, we need to be smart. And he does mention a book, Dalinar, but I think his wife is realistically going to be the person who makes that happen, even though there is a big change after Gavilar's death. I know that as well, so I'm interested to see how that develops. And I mentioned obviously Taravangian is something I'm really excited about, but getting the flashbacks and seeing how we go from that Dalinar, the wife interaction, why he forgot, we know kind of why, it's because of the Night Watcher, but why he either desired to, or why the curse or boon selected him to be unable to remember her, and we'll see why that's important. And I think it's because he did something awful, but we'll see. So yeah, there's loads happening. There's some predictions for you, but let's move on to one of the other storylines. So we jump back in with Shallan, and immediately Shallan addresses the double homicide that she did, her mum and her dad. And that is a relief because it was so tense. The previous book was so tense trying to get to those lies. And it was so strange because you know that is, well, I figured out relatively early that was going to be the destination. I don't think it was really difficult to figure out that was what she was hiding from herself. So to see her address it so early in this book is great, but then she also is obviously very traumatized by it. So, but the crazy thing is we know there's more lies. There's something even greater. The pattern is certain. Shallan will hate him for making her remember the lie. And we know it's not about her brothers because he says that. So what is it about? I don't know. The only thing I can guess is maybe she is truly something evil. Maybe she is dark and twisted beyond what she can even remember. But I don't know. I don't get that vibe either. So the jury's out on that. I would need some more information. I'm sure there's already hints that I've missed, but I'm excited to slowly pick those up. And I don't know if that lie is going to be told or revealed in this book, or if it's going to be one that we're going to wait for. But either way, I'm excited to figure it out. We also get a scene with Adolin and Shallan, and they like vow not to ruin the relationship. Each one of them vows, and I don't know if that's like dooming the relationship and their vows are destined to be broken. But I hope not, because I actually quite like them as a couple. I feel like they're actually a decent fit. So maybe we're going to see them hang on to those vows. But my guess would be that there's still a love triangle to be had. Like Kaladin and her have some undeniable chemistry, and I very much hope that they don't ruin the relationship that Adolin and her has. But my guess would be that they come close to. So we'll have to watch this space to figure out what happens between those three. So she's back to investigating, and she realizes that there's been these like copycat murders. And Mraize is back in town, Amaram's back in town, and Mraize tells her to, what did she say? Destroy the darkness or something along those lines. Kill the darkness. Now, could this mean the darkness as in the Herald, the one that is with Zeph? I don't know. I don't know if they're in Erytheria, but I don't think so, because the novella had them involved. So, I mean, he must be involved as well. Not sure. I don't think it really fits, but I mean, who is doing these mirror murders? I mean, that seems like the kind of unhinged thing that Darkness, the Herald of Justice, would be doing. So maybe it is him there. But why would he be doing that? I have no idea. And that's why I think it must be a herald in some kind of capacity, because they seem to have the most illogical and cracked minds. So it would make sense that one of them is doing that. But the big question for Shallan is, when will she figure out or be told that Kaladin actually killed her brother? And I would guess it's going to be at the most inopportune moment, because Mraize mentions Helleran, her brother's name, so he probably knows, unless it's a different secret he's talking about. But I could see him bringing it up, maybe when Kaladin and her are starting to get a little romantic, or maybe in a scene where they're both fighting on the same sides and it causes them to like go at each other. But I don't know how efficient Shallan would be in an actual like hand-to-hand fight, so I'm hoping that they figure out a way to get past it, but it's going to be difficult. Also, briefly, I want to talk about Kaladin. So Kaladin's with these Voidbringers, and he's starting to build a relationship with them, and I can definitely see him siding with them, not over the Alethi, but just trying to bring them together, and that causing some problems near the end. But it also seems like one of them has a regular Spren, because it keeps being referred to as a Voidbringer or a Void Spren. But I don't see any evidence. The only evidence we saw was that it was really similar to Syl. So I would guess that actually, in fact, one of these Parshendi has been bonded by maybe a Wind Spren or a more regular Spren, and we have a Night's Radiant Parshendi. So that's my guess, and that's what I think is going to happen. Kaladin will make that realization and make the connection that, oh, okay, these can be saved, and we should go about saving them. And it may end up meaning that he has to fight on their side near the end to kind of prove this point in some capacity. All right, so what are some of the extras, the little tidbits, the little things? Elhokar must die. He will die in this book. There's no way he doesn't. He's just been kind of demoted again to Dalinar, by Dalinar. No, well, kind of by Dalinar. He does it by choice, but I mean, Dalinar is running the show. So he's also a Night's Radiant, and I can't remember exactly what my evidence was for this, but I made this guess, I suppose, last book, and I think it was because he sees like cryptids in the mirror or something along those lines. But there was irrefutable evidence that he was a Night's Radiant. So we will see that come to pass, and then I would think we will see Elhokar's demise in this book. And one of the big questions is, what could Shard Plate be? Because that seems like it's going to be a storyline in this book, and I'm really struggling to make a guess. The best guess I could think of was maybe it's like Spren who have sacrificed themselves, but not in the same way as the one they're bonded to. That doesn't really make sense. And Shard Plate, obviously, like bits of it can split off, and then it has to like regrow. But I don't know what that regrowing costs. So yeah, I don't have any good guesses right now. for what shard plate is, but it's something I'm going to be thinking on throughout. I also think that I have figured out who brought Nightblood to this universe, and my guess is that Zahel, the swordsman, he made a comment, and he talks about black and white, and he uses it in like a strange way, and only the characters from Warbreaker talk about colors that way. So my guess is if somebody is Vasha, and you know Vasha was fantastic as a swordsperson as well, and also Zahel is just completely unbothered by everything, and that would suggest that he has some abilities, and he's not to be afraid of the regular person. So my guess is that Zahel is Vasha, and I feel relatively confident in that right now, unless somebody else brought Nightblood, and I'm just completely missing the point. The thrill. What is the thrill? The thrill is something that I just took for granted. But the more I think about it, the more it's only in Alethi, and someone mentions that it's passed down from the Alethi bloodlines, and that means that somewhere something was in the Alethi bloodline that isn't necessarily definitely human. And it got me thinking, like, maybe a herald could breed with a regular human. Maybe it was a Knight's Radiant, but I don't know if that would make a difference. Maybe it was a Voidbringer. Like, I'm not sure, but the thrill seems to be a completely different way of thinking, and it reminds me a bit of some of the way the Parshendi think. You know, it seems to be like it changes your brain and your mind, and it puts you in a state of mind that gives you a little bit less of control of your body. So maybe a Parshendi mated with an Alethi or something along those lines, because it sounds a bit like, it's a bit like when they get taken by a song, you know? I don't know, I might be reaching here, but that was my first instinct. So that's a pretty vague guess, but have that, and I think it's something along those lines. There will be something back in their history that is important, or maybe honor. I don't know. Something is bred into the Alethi, and that's why they feel the thrill, because nobody else does. And a final extra is when Dalinar is doing his flashback, he steps out into the storm and he sees like a glowing creature with long spindly legs. I don't think that was a chasm fiend. I don't think at that point they were seeing chasm fiends. And it reminded me that Shallan and Kaladin, when they were in Words of Radiance in the chasm, when the storm was happening, they saw some figures or creatures, but that, I think that was more like human size, but I can't remember, glowing and walking across the top of the shattered plains, and they didn't quite see it. So is that the same thing? And what on earth is it? Well, I don't know, but hopefully we find out. So what's going to happen in this book? I don't know. I don't feel like I have enough clues. I think that going back to Dalinar is definitely going to happen. I think finding out a bit more about Urithiru and what's going on there, and somebody stealing the sword, I think that's pretty key. And I think Dalinar obviously is our main protagonist here. So his revelations with regards to his wife and the Night Watcher and why he changed as a person, I think what's going to happen is he's going to have to make the same choice that he made previously without his memories. And it's going to be pretty crucial. Maybe there's a battle in Dalinar, or they go back there, or maybe he has to submit to the Parshendi or submit to somebody rather than pushing on and being the Blackthorn. So he kind of has to make whatever choice he did previously again. And I think that's going to be the culmination, you know, to make the changes to become who he is now. I think that's going to be the culmination of this book. And again, pretty vague, but I'm at the start of a very long book. So those are my guesses. I do these types of videos for a bunch of different books. If you have a book you would like me to read and try and guess, put it in the comments. If you enjoyed this, please comment. I want to give a massive shout out to my all subscribers, but definitely my members as well. You guys rock. You keep the channel running. And I will see you next Sunday at 10 a.m.